It was a dark night. The moon had hidden behind the clouds, and the sound of the wind felt as if the Koe-Sia, the Black Mountain, was shaking its head. The villagers often said that strange sounds came from this mountain, sometimes a scream, sometimes an echo of laughter. That night, Alina herself heard the sound. At first, she thought it might be an animal, but then the sound grew louder, and it was exactly like a human scream. Alina wanted to close the window, but before she could, she saw a white shadow moving on the mountain's peak. At that very moment, a message appeared on her phone from an unknown number. "He is waiting for you. If you have the courage, come to Koe-Sia." Alina's heart started beating fast. She couldn't understand. Was this some kind of prank? Or was someone really calling her? Alina looked out the window again. The white shadow had disappeared. But the voice, the mysterious voice from the mountain, seemed to be calling her name. It was getting louder and louder, and when she opened the window a little, she could hear it more clearly. It was definitely a man's voice. He was singing a song, a sad song, a song about love and loss. Alina wanted to call the police, but what would they do? They would just laugh at her and say there were no fools like in fairy tales. But deep down, Alina felt that something was pulling her towards the mountain, as if the voice was a beacon calling out to her. What should she do? Her mind was telling her to stay inside, but her heart was pounding in her chest, urging her to go outside. Alina was in a dilemma, torn between what her mind was telling her and what her heart was feeling. Suddenly, another message popped up on her phone. "Don't be afraid. Come to me. I'll protect you." Alina gasped. Who was this? Who was sending these messages? And why did he say come to me? What did he mean? Suddenly the lights went out and the room was plunged into darkness. Alina screamed. She tried to call out for help, but her voice was lost in the darkness. She stumbled around in the room trying to find the door in the pitch-black room. Her hands touched a cold, hard surface, and she felt a surge of hope. She found the door. Taking a deep breath, she opened it and stepped out into the darkness. The voice was closer now, and Alina felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She walked towards the mountain, her steps lighter, her fear replaced by a strange sense of curiosity. As she neared the mountain, the voice grew louder, and the trees around her began to glow with an eerie light. Alina's eyes widened in surprise. She could see the path ahead illuminated as if someone was guiding her. She continued walking until she reached the edge of the forest, and there in front of her, bathed in the silver light of the moon, stood a man. His eyes were closed and his hands were outstretched as if in a gesture of welcome. Alina hesitated for a moment, then stepped out of the forest and into the clearing. As soon as she entered the clearing, the man turned around and Alina gasped. His face was pale, his eyes were dark, and his lips were stained a deep red. Alina took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. Then she noticed something strange. The man's clothes were soaked in blood. He looked at Alina, and a smile slowly spread across his face. "You came," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I knew you would." Alina couldn't speak. She was frozen in place, staring at the man in disbelief. The man took a step towards her and Alina took a step back. She tried to scream, but no sound came out of her mouth. The man was now only a few steps away from her, and she could see the blood dripping from his hands. Suddenly, the man lunged towards her and Alina screamed. This chilling tale comes from a place where legends are born and nightmares come to life. Our story begins with a young woman named Alina, who lived in a world where reality was as fluid as a dream. One day, as Alina was writing in her diary, the pen in her hand suddenly froze. A shiver ran down her spine as an inexplicable sound echoed through her room, a sound that seemed to come from within the very walls themselves. Fear tightened its grip around her heart. She needed to escape, to flee from this suffocating terror that threatened to consume her. So she did the only thing she could think of. She switched on the light. As the brightness spread into the corners of her room, chasing away the shadows, the sound faded into an eerie silence. But that strange sound still echoed in her heart. Now, curiosity battled with fear in her mind. What was that noise? Had it come from her own imagination? Was she truly alone in that house? These questions swirled in her head like a vortex, pulling her towards the drawing room. The drawing room was where the silence was broken by the ticking of an old grandfather clock. Its pendulum swung rhythmically, marking the seconds that ticked by like the heartbeat of a slumbering beast. As Alina approached, she noticed that the door was slightly open, as if someone had just walked inside. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a trapped bird fluttering against its cage. But something compelled her forward. Gathering all the courage she could muster, Alina pushed the door open. Inside, everything was as she had left it. The curtains were drawn, the furniture dusted, and the only sound was the ticking of the clock. Yet a piece of paper lay on the sofa, as though waiting for her. With trembling hands, she moved towards it. On the paper was written in elegant script, "Time is short. If you want to know what is really going to happen to you, come to the lake near the mountain at midnight." The paper almost slipped from her hands. Her breath caught in her throat. Was this a threat or a warning? Who was trying to contact her and why? And what did they mean by, "what is really going to happen to you"? Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She whirled around, her eyes wide with fear, and at the door stood a stranger. His face was hidden in the shadows of his hood, his tall frame casting an ominous silhouette against the dim light that filtered through the window. In a low, hushed voice that seemed to resonate with the ticking of the clock, he said, "You've heard the sound. Now there's no turning back." With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, the stranger turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Alina rooted to the spot. The weight of his words pressed down on her. "You've heard the sound. Now there's no turning back." What sound? What did he mean? Was he talking about the sound from earlier? And what did he mean by, "there's no turning back"? Fear and confusion battled within her. The stranger's words echoed in her mind, twisting and turning like a serpent, coiling around her thoughts. His words were a dark premonition, a hint of something sinister lurking at the edge of her perception. Torn between the desire to understand and the instinct to flee, Alina found herself at a crossroads. The path ahead was shrouded in mystery and danger, yet the alternative, the path of ignorance, seemed equally perilous. The thought of the stranger, of his cryptic message and the unexplainable sound sent shivers down her spine. But something within her, a flicker of defiance or perhaps morbid curiosity, urged her forward. She had heard the sound, and as the stranger had said, there was no turning back. And so, clutching the piece of paper with the ominous message in her hand, Alina made her way towards the door. The night was young, and the events that would unfold near the lake under the cloak of midnight were only just beginning. The full story will be out soon, so stay tuned. See you next time. Alina's feet felt as if they were rooted to the ground. She wanted to run, to scream, but she couldn't. Her body seemed to be held captive by an invisible force. Slowly, she raised her head and tried to look into the stranger's eyes, but his face remained hidden in the shadows. The only feature she could see was his cruel smile, which seemed to mock her fear. "Who are you?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling. But the stranger didn't answer. Instead, in a slow, deliberate voice, he said, "If you want to know the truth, come to the lake at midnight. If you do not come, you will regret it forever." With that, he turned and walked toward the door, disappearing into the darkness. Alina's hands trembled as she clutched the iron railing. What truth? What was this man hiding? Why had he come here? And why did he want her to come to the lake at midnight? Fear warred with curiosity within her, but in the end, curiosity won. At midnight, Alina quietly left her house. Her heart pounded in her chest as she walked along the rough path leading to the lake. The air grew colder, and the tall trees on both sides of the path seemed to be watching her, their branches clawing at the darkness. When she reached the foot of the Koe-Sia, the mountain of darkness, the moon's faint light shimmered on the lake's surface, creating an eerie, beautiful sight. The water was so still, it felt as though time itself had stopped. Suddenly, Alina heard a splash in the middle of the lake. Startled, she looked toward the sound and saw bubbles rising to the surface. Then something dark surfaced, bobbing up and down with the ripples. It was an old chest, one that looked like it had been buried under the lake for years. It floated slowly toward the shore, as if beckoning her to come closer. Alina wanted to step back, but at that very moment, the bushes rustled behind her and the stranger reappeared. His voice, deep and echoing, broke the silence. "This chest," he said, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. "This chest will decide your fate." Alina's breath caught in her throat. What did he mean? Was this chest dangerous? What secrets did it hold? Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to move forward. As she approached the chest, she noticed strange symbols carved into its surface, symbols that seemed to writhe and twist like living creatures. The stranger watched her intently, his face still hidden in the shadows. When she reached out to touch the chest, a low growl echoed from its depths, sending shivers down her spine. Alina wanted to pull her hand back, but as if mesmerized, she couldn't. The growl grew louder, and suddenly the chest began to shake violently. Startled, Alina stumbled back, knocking over a nearby stone. The noise echoed across the lake, shattering the stillness of the night. The stranger made a quick movement, and in the brief flash of moonlight, Alina saw a hint of a smile on his lips. He seemed pleased with the commotion. Ignoring her fear, he continued. "Do you still want to know the truth?" His voice was a low growl, matching the sound emanating from the chest. Alina hesitated, torn between her desire for answers and the primal fear that gripped her. The growls from the chest grew louder, more insistent, as if urging her to make a decision. She looked at the stranger, his face still shrouded in darkness, and then at the chest, its growls echoing her pounding heart. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, I want to know the truth." A shiver ran down Alina's spine. Her breathing grew heavier. With trembling hands, she tried to touch the chest. The wood was decayed and soaked, as if it had been submerged in water for centuries. Suddenly, the chest opened on its own. Inside lay a red diary, its corners burned and blackened. Alina picked up the diary. On the very first page, it was written, "This mountain was never deserted. Its dwellers still live among you." Alina was about to turn to the next page when the stranger stopped her hand. "Reading further is dangerous for you. Once you know what's written in here, the same fate will befall you as it did them." Summoning courage, Alina replied, "I want to know." For a moment, the stranger's eyes glimmered. Then he spoke, "Very well. But remember, once you unlock this secret, there will be no way back." Meanwhile, the calm lake turned into restless waves. It felt as though something alive was moving beneath its surface. The stranger stepped back, no longer touching the diary or the box, his gaze fixed on Alina. The diary was heavy in Alina's hands, its leather cover cold. Turning the brittle pages, each rustle sounding like a whisper in the tomb-like silence, she found descriptions of rituals, sacrifices, and an ominous prophecy. Suddenly, a gust of wind violently shook the ancient tree by the lake, and its leaves began to fall, forming a swirling vortex around Alina. The stranger gasped, "No, you shouldn't be doing this. You'll unleash something best left undisturbed." Alina, her face pale but resolute, continued reading. The diary's words echoed in her mind. "Beware the whispers in the water, for they carry secrets best left unsung. When the leaves of the whispering tree turn to ash, the veil grows thin and the whispers turn to screams." As the last leaf fell, a chilling scream echoed from the depths of the lake. The water began to rise, and with it, a figure emerged, its form shifting and grotesque, like a creature from a nightmare. The stranger cried out in alarm, "You've done it now! You've awakened the slumbering horror! There's no turning back! Run!" Terror gripping her heart, Alina fled. Behind her, the creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very foundations of the ancient mountain. Branches snapped, stones tumbled, and the ground trembled under the force of its steps. Yet despite the chaos, Alina dared not stop. She had to escape the wrath of the awakened horror. Suddenly, the forest seemed to reach out, its gnarled branches like skeletal fingers trying to grab her. Thorny bushes tore at her clothes, and the roots of ancient trees threatened to trip her. Yet Alina pushed on, the diary clutched tightly in her hand. She could feel the creature's presence behind her, growing closer with every labored breath. The diary thumped against her chest, its leather cover as hard and cold as stone. The forest seemed to have come alive, its rustling leaves and snapping branches echoing her own terrified heartbeat. Finally, just as she thought the creature would catch up with her, she burst out of the forest, collapsing on the clearing, gasping for breath. The diary slipped from her grasp and lay open on the ground, its pages fluttering in the wind like the wings of a trapped bird. The stranger rushed to her side, his face etched with worry. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice echoing the turmoil within her. Alina, still catching her breath, looked up at him, her eyes wide and glistening with fear. In that moment, their gazes locked, and Alina knew that their fates were intertwined in ways they had yet to comprehend. The diary lay forgotten on the ground, its secrets momentarily put on hold. For now, they had survived the awakening. But the danger was far from over. The creature was loose, and its hunger for vengeance had only just begun. Alina and the stranger exchanged a look, understanding dawning in their eyes. They were bound together by the secrets of the mountain, and they would need each other's help to survive. But as they stood there facing the rising darkness, neither of them could foresee the trials that lay ahead or the sacrifices that would be demanded of them. Every full moon, eerie screams echo across the mountains, terrifying everyone who hears them. But the scariest part is no one knows where they come from or who or what is behind them. All we know is that whoever finds the lost diary of Ko'esia Mountain will hear these screams, but not for long. Because once the diary reveals its secrets, whoever is destined to hear the screams of Ko'esia can never escape them. It all started when a young woman named Alina stumbled upon an old leather diary by the shores of a lake nestled at the foot of the mountain. As soon as she touched it, the waves of the lake grew stronger and the diary trembled in her hands. Suddenly, the diary seemed to glow, and the only word she could make out was sacrifice. Over and over the word sacrifice flashed before her eyes. Just then, a stranger appeared on the shore. He looked at Alina and said in a harsh tone, "This mountain will never be free until someone willingly offers a sacrifice." Alina was stunned. "Whose sacrifice?" The stranger didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the lake. Alina followed him, and as she reached out to touch the water, the stranger suddenly turned around. His eyes, which had seemed kind and gentle, now appeared cold and distant, like those of a wild animal. "The one who hears the voice," he said, his voice echoing ominously, "and tonight, that is you." Before Alina could even process his words, the stranger disappeared into the darkness. As soon as he was gone, a strange black mist began to rise from the lake. It swirled around Alina, and from within it came the sound of pounding hearts and faint whispers. Alina tried to call out, but her voice caught in her throat. She felt as if dozens of unseen eyes were staring at her, judging her, demanding something from her. Panicked, she wanted to run, to get away from the suffocating feeling that threatened to consume her. But her feet felt heavy like anchors, holding her to the spot. Then she saw a small boat by the lakeshore and got into it. Alina wanted to escape from the suffocating darkness, but no matter how hard she tried, the boat wouldn't move. No matter how much she strained against the ropes that held her to the dock, they wouldn't budge. Desperate, she turned to the diary, hoping for an explanation, but the only word she saw was sacrifice. Was the stranger right? Was she the sacrifice? If so, what did he mean? And why was the mountain keeping her there? Alina didn't have answers. Fear gnawed at her, threatening to overwhelm her. Finally, she slammed the diary shut, throwing it back into the lake. With a final scream, the waves of the lake rose high into the night. Moments later, silence fell. When the sun rose the next morning, the villagers gathered by the lake. They were searching for Alina, who hadn't been seen since the previous evening, but they didn't find her. All they discovered was a single burnt page of the diary. On it, only one sentence was still visible. "The sacrifice has been accepted." The villagers were terrified. They knew the legend of Ko'esia Mountain and the diary found in its lake. Whoever heard the screams of the mountain at night would always disappear without a trace. Now, the only clue to whatever had happened to Alina was that diary. What would become of her? Did she manage to escape the clutches of the mountain, or was she now a part of the mountain itself? For centuries, people have been fascinated by stories of sacrifice and the lengths we go to protect those we love. From Romeo and Juliet to Famine and Iago, these tales have captured our imaginations and raised questions about the meaning of sacrifice and its impact on our lives. But sometimes the greatest sacrifices are the ones we make without even realizing it. So, what do you think? What kind of sacrifices are you willing to make for the ones you love? For more such heart-pounding stories, subscribe to the channel.